Hello, and welcome to the Dogfight, a podcast dedicated to the London Spitfire and Overwatch League. Fasten your seatbelts and observe the no smoking sign, because today we'll be discussing the elephant in the room about the London roster, Code Red's partnership with the team, and a review of the Spitfire's preseason matches. We got a really great show. A lot happened. I'm very excited to talk about all of these things.
Me too.
Let's introduce our guests. We have CJ.
Hello.
Back again, and Jordan.
Hey, what's up?
Nothing much. Got a small crew, but we shall manage and brave the storm.
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll be fine.
Before we get started, did you guys watch all the Overwatch League stuff that happened over the weekend?
Yes.
It was great. I loved
tried
it.
to watch as much as I could, but I did at least see all the London games.
Yeah, I've seen all the matches, I think at least twice, because I'm doing some tactics scouting to get some ideas for the new meta, help my team come up with some new strats, and also just because I like watching this.
Yes,
They did a great job. I know we're going to probably go into this a little bit later,
the production
but
was fantastic.
Oh,
it was
yeah,
kind
for
of
sure.
amazing. Actually seeing the stage for the first time, light up.
I love
and
how
all
big the
effects that they
stage is.
did, it was so neat.
Yeah, the stage is just really huge, and it has this. For those that haven't seen it, it has all of these screens. So when they're showing the map, all of the screens kind of are put together to make this big kind of tapestry of here's the map. So when they go to Dorado, they play the music, and you see a preview of the map, and it just looks super pretty. And this, the stage is it lights up with the team's colors, and it looks really great. The crowd was all right. I wish they would have gotten a little bit more into it, but we can.
I feel badly because one of the problems that I kind of noticed at the beginning of it was they probably really shouldn't be panning to the very back of the stadium.
Oh yeah, where there's less
because it
seats.
wasn't a full house. Yeah, there wasn't a lot. It wasn't a full house yet, which makes sense. I mean, it just started, so of course it wouldn't be a full house.
Yeah,
but,
it's the preseason as well.
It didn't look very pretty when they panned it, and then there's just all these empty seats. I was like,
Although
well,
to be fair,
all right,
that's still better than a lot of esports events with a venue that I've seen. I've seen more empty buildings in streams.
True. But we can talk about Overwatch League later.
Yeah.
Right now, we're going to talk about the elephant in the room. This is something that many people who are fans of Overwatch and maybe fans of Cloud9 have addressed with the London Spitfire, and that is, hey, this is a really weird setup. You have a North American organization owning the only European spot, and there is a Korean roster. And some people are saying, I can't, possibly go for this team. I'm from London. England is my city, but I don't think I can cheer for this team because they're just, from a different culture, of a different nationality, and I'm not sure if I can really get behind this kind of, this roster. And I think that's incredibly silly. And I've prepared talking points. Many talking points.
I mean, of course, the joke also is that we are also a North American-based podcast talking about a London team who is all made of Koreans. So, I mean, it's all kind of a mess, but it'll be a good mess. Sometimes messes are fun.
Messes
They're
are
good.
great.
Yeah, exactly. Not everything has to be absolutely set in stone perfect.
And hey, I'll be the first to chime in. I understand people from the EU being kind of frustrated because it's supposed to be a global league and the one European team doesn't have any Europeans on it or really involved in its management. But here's the thing. You've got two of the best teams in Korea making up this roster. You'd have a really hard time buying a better team, and while I understand that people would be frustrated not seeing hometown heroes, guys I don't know, Numlocked or Mikey A or UK esports people, and yes, that's pretty much all I can come up with for Overwatch.
There's Boombox. You forgot Boombox.
Oh,
He's the other one.
Yes, absolutely. Crap.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Boombox is
no,
there.
that's a very good point. But honestly, I wouldn't be personally, I'm a New Yorker, and my team is entirely Korean, and I'm like, oh, cool, this is LW Blue. They're really good. My team has a decent shot.
Yeah, so the first point that I want to I'm sorry if I cut you off, Jordan, but I wanted to interject.
No, you go ahead. I was just agreeing with that.
Okay, yeah. So the first point that I wanted to make is, at least from my perspective as a North American fan, so I live in Alabama. That's pretty much as isolated as you can get as far as esports goes. So if I am sort of the typical fan where it's, if you're wanting to use the argument of like nationality or whatever, this makes it incredibly difficult, because if you look at the makeup for the NA teams that are in Overwatch League, there are 9 teams. 3 of these teams have no Americans on their roster. That's North America, Philly, and Florida. 2 of these teams only have 1 American, Dallas and Gladiators. I'm counting iRemix since he is Puerto Rican and he's essentially a U.S. citizen.
Well, he is a U.S. citizen. There's no Puerto Rican to American citizens.
Yeah.
Yes.
They are.
And only 2 have only like 3 Americans, so it's Boston and Los Angeles.
Yep.
So with so many teams having so few Americans to play, where am I to look for teams? So I only have, I believe the rest are like the San Francisco Shock and I think maybe Houston.
Yeah.
I didn't write that.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, Fuel
Houston
also
and
a little bit.
Shock.
Well, Fuel only has 1 American in it, and that's Seagull.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at it from a perspective of like nationality, I think it's fairly stupid, because North America has the same problem. There's just not a lot of people from the country that has the most spots, because there are other great talent, and it's supposed to be this global thing, and it shouldn't really matter. So from that perspective, I'm just kind of puzzled, because it's like, yeah, they're all Korean, but they're all super good, and they'll probably win a lot. And what's more important?
Like, to me, that's always kind of baffling, because I don't get into that many, traditional sports, but there aren't that many teams that are comprised entirely of people native to that city. Like, not everyone from the Minnesota Vikings was born and raised and bred Minnesotan. There's a lot of people who just got, drafted or scouted and got picked up by the team who aren't, they're not from that city or even that state necessarily. They might not have been Minnesota Vikings fans, but they're here. They're here to play their hearts out for, you guys. So it is what it is. Like, I can understand it, but at the same point, it's like a weirdly moot point to me, considering every other like sports team ever. Then again, I'm not from London. Maybe they have a different sort of philosophy about it than I do.
Yeah.
I mean, another thing to kind of think about is, this is the one slight disadvantage about Overwatch trying to do such a big esports league when it's still such a young game. It's the fact that there hasn't really been a lot of time for a lot of these pro players to just show up in every part of the world. They have their top 500, and their top 500, even though it's separated by region, there's only, 500 of them. Like, certain, the top of the top, there's not, too many to really choose from. Compared to games such as, like, CSGO, the game's been around for, I don't even know how many years at this point. So there's a lot more variety, there's a lot more players. So that's definitely a disadvantage to it just being such a young game. I'm really hoping, especially when this new open contenders, everything, when that all kind of rolls through before Season 2, we'll see a lot more individual talent, maybe from other parts of the world.
Yeah.
And maybe a lot more from the UK, or EU in general. I'm kind of hoping
that is something that, I am concerned about with the Overwatch League, is sort of the long-term sustainability of it, because it seems like they haven't put as much thought into the tier 2 of the scene, sort of the feeder system that develops that talent and sends it upwards, as there has been on the big stage, which you need that tier 2 scene if you're going to keep having new people and new orgs and stuff come into the Overwatch League. But that's an entirely different debate. Probably for an entirely different podcast.
Oh yeah, I know that's completely different from like anything we're talking about. It's just
it's a relevant concern.
That's just the slight downside.
Yeah, it's certainly a relevant concern. I think, but that's, like you said, that's a different discussion. I think another perspective that people aren't really thinking of is it's a business. As with any sports team, their objective is to win, and if you have the money to buy the best talent, you get the best talent. What is better, using all this money that Cloud9 got to secure some of the best Korean players, or spend all this time and effort trying to try out a bunch of European players, hoping that some synergy is there, only to maybe be like Cleveland Browns level bad.
Or...
Sure. Oh, hey, our...
Gotta bring up the Browns.
Well, I mean, you have to. I mean, no one wants to be the Cleveland Browns.
Fair enough.
Though they did win this weekend, I believe.
I mean, and a flip side to that, or not flip side, but like a continuation of that thought, is kind of how like what Dallas did by hiring not only really good players, but a lot of popular players. I mean, they had their team Envious, of course, and that was already a team that's established. But adding on like Seagull, adding on XQC, those are very big names in the scene, and that's a huge business tactic. They're good players, and they happen to work well, but they're also that flip side
themselves.
Yeah, they'll bring money. A lot of people know Fuel not just because of Envious, but because those two players are, I would probably say, two of the biggest in the streaming scene for Overwatch in general. It's definitely Seagull. He's probably number one.
They're definitely up there. Though I will say, to me, the comparison that you can make here, sort of the contrast would be Boston Uprising, which I know I shat on him a bit last podcast, and I am willing to eat some crow and admit that they performed better than I thought they would. Striker definitely did a very good job. They were competitive, and that team, despite being a lot of relatively unknown talent, really did turn up. So, there is some validity to that approach if you take that time. And, they didn't look great in situations where they had to improvise and rely on their communications rather than what they had sort of coached and drilled and practiced, but it's...
I mean, honestly, the entirety of the contenders, there were a lot of, I wouldn't say upsets, but like surprises, for sure. From certain teams. Certain teams stepped up a lot more than I expected. Certain teams, didn't really bring as much heat as I thought they would. We'll go into that probably in a little bit. In a very particular team that we'll talk about.
Yes, for sure.
But
that will. This too shall pass. But for now,
it will pass.
We should move on to since we're on the topic of the London Spitfire in the UK, we have gotten a little announcement about their operations and how that team is going to be run.
Yes. So a lot of people are sort of a bit worried about this brand because it's in London, but you have these Korean players. What are you doing? Well, I think they may have made a step in the right direction because Code Red Esports is going to be spearheading the London Spitfire UK operations. They are apparently a really big esports organization over in London. They're very involved in the UK scene. So
yeah, I think they manage
a lot of marketing potential there. As well as the sick, they're planning on doing this really sick physical space. It's going to be like a housing area. They're going to have viewing parties and amateur events and like a fan area, and they're going to have an arena for the home games, and they're going to sell merch. I think they're even going to sell food. So it's going to just be this insane spot for people to flock to.
Which I really, really like that as an idea, because if you can make this like little venue for viewing parties, host tournaments in the home of the London Spitfire, really go kind of nuts in building this community and having a central hub for it, that really is a great idea that's going to get people involved in a team that they, might not have otherwise.
Yeah, it'll definitely help, especially since, they'll have events where they can probably meet the players, and a lot of the players on Spitfire are very for learning English. I know Fisher's probably the best English speaker, and he's actually very involved in the Spitfire Discord. He's super nice.
Yeah,
and I think other players speak it all right, but this coupled with other stuff.
For marketing, great idea. Having someplace local, as you said before. Something that was a huge concern, especially to people in the UK, was merch. Because as of right now, the only way to purchase merchandise for the Overwatch League is through the Blizzard Online store, which is, of course, all handled through here in the States. So that can, of course, lead to some trouble bringing it overseas, add, extra money on top of it. So that caused, I feel like that's, I can't remember whether or not, or how orders have been going since the store opened on the 6th for the UK. But that was a big concern, because that's a big disadvantage. So hopefully the fact that they can access a store without having to deal with those outside fees or inconvenience should be really big for that. And just having a place in general is just a great idea. Bringing everyone together, that's kind of the tradition of sports in general, is just to bring people together, watching something you love, getting competitive. Yeah. So I feel like they'll be able to spin this really well. Good on Code Red. That was a really smart idea from them. Looking at their website now, I'm going to be really interested to see how much they actually brand London within what they already have.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the idea of depending on what they do, getting a sort of sports bar set up for esports where people can come and nerd out, have a pint, watch their team play. I love that idea.
Have a pint.
I love that idea so much.
Yeah, I think just the advantage of just having a physical space is something that fans would just go nuts for, regardless of the team, because it's just, this is a place where I can go and just hang out and watch some video game sports and not feel like I'm being judged or whatever. This is great. I want to hang out here all the time. You can, and from what it sounds like, they're going to be doing a lot to really try and grow the UK esports scene as well, because, and this is a topic we didn't really touch on, but the UK scene in terms of Overwatch is concerned is very lacking. There's only a few, there's 2 players from the UK in Overwatch League, and I think that with this, coupled with a bunch of other events, it really is looking to grow and strengthen Europe and the UK just as, as locations, to try to get better talent and get people more interested. So I think that all in all, this is going to be really great, and I'm really excited to see what the future holds for it.
Absolutely, and I hope that a lot of other teams follow that lead.
There already has been a really successful run with San Fran. They had 2 locations, I think, for their preseason games to actually watch at 2 esports bars that they had. I know there's some around, at least in my neck of the woods, near DC. There are some video game bars that you can play video games and just get drunk. So I'd be interested to see if they do events also. But I do agree. I hope other teams do this, and I feel like they will, especially towards the beginning of the season when everyone actually moves to their location. Right now, because everyone's over in LA, they can't really have a lot of that interaction just yet, but I feel like once everyone kind of goes their designated city is when we'll start seeing those events open up, the meet and greets, kind of like what Code Red's going to be planning to do with London.
Yeah, definitely. And shall we now address the other elephant in the room?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, we talked about some upsets before.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? We can talk about this a little bit.
That was a practice game. That was a mulligan. We get a mulligan.
It was, but for everyone who hasn't watched it or has been living under a rock and hasn't really followed the Overwatch League preseason, in our first game, the London Spitfire went down against the LA Gladiators 2-3.
Oh yeah, and it was a very interesting game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was.
Go ahead. I would say I'll give it to Gladiators. They They pulled out a bit stronger than I expected. They were one of my personal lower ranked teams when it comes to just an overall ranking between all 12 teams. And
Yeah.
I mean, after seeing everyone else play later on, I probably still wouldn't list them in like my top 5 or anything, but they synced well.
They showed up.
I will say the main runner, of course, being Surefour on their team, is definitely the crown jewel of that lineup.
Surefour and Hydration, I knew they were going to be good.
Yeah.
Asher showed up. I didn't know what to expect from him, but I was pleasantly surprised. Bishu and Remix also did a really, really good job. And, I mean, Shaz and Big Goose. I'm a big Gigante fan. I love them.
Yeah.
They turned up. Shaz was getting picks on Zenyatta all over the place throughout the preseason, which was, really, really impressive, offensive Zenyatta play. But
I think
something I wanted to ask, actually, because this is something that I saw throughout the entire preseason. Widowmaker was being played a lot, and that's kind of odd to me.
Yeah, I found that odd as well.
Just because she didn't have a big buff or anything, not like anything besides a while back when her grappling hook, timer for that got decreased, and her venom mine you can see through walls. That's the only buff she's had, and that was a little while ago, but every single starting game had 2 Widowmakers going against each other.
Well, you've got to look at the maps that were being used there. Dorado, Temple of Anubis, and Junkertown are both maps that have big, long sight lines that are perfect for a Widow to sort of get in and try and get stuff done. And if you're running sort of a dive composition or, a very... essentially, in any of those, you need mobility to really sort of... or mobility. In any of those cases, getting that first pick is really important. And...
that's for I mean, I get that. That's definitely something to think about for that. It was just very odd, because usually when a character... yeah, you don't see her that much. And when you see a character being played that much, your first assumption is, oh, well, there must have been a big buff, or there must have been something that really pushed her to be that played. She was played as much, I wouldn't say as much as Tracer was, because Tracer's also in every single game, and she's always in every single game though.
Yeah.
It was just definitely something I picked out right away, because she's just not someone I expected to see.
Although, personally, the thing that I focused on with this game, the thing that really stuck out to me, was the majority of this game between London and Los Angeles was played out with the GC Busan roster, who, they're the reigning champions of Apex and APAC, but they didn't look like the same dominant killing machines that they were in those tournaments. And I think a lot of that comes down to the
stage experience, probably.
I don't know, because they've been playing.
They seemed
stage
off.
They did seem off. I think the communication was lacking for sure, because especially on Junkertown, when they were up against that pipe.
Junkertown was a mess in general.
Yeah, it was.
And it was also weird. It was weird. I mean, also, don't forget that, big play when Surefour just pulled out Bastion.
Oh, he ran a train on them, and it was so hard to watch.
It was pretty bad. And I feel I just didn't think they were expecting that.
Yeah,
It was just such a curveball for them to see a play like that, which I feel to us here in the States, and just from the tournaments we've already seen with contenders, that's kind of, I wouldn't want to say normal, but plays like that's a little bit more okay, yeah, they're going to do this weird play. We've seen it. I feel over there it's not as common to see plays like that, where they're just okay, yeah, I'm just going to pull out Bastion and just kill everybody. I feel they were kind of okay, what is this?
Yeah. So I was going to mention, what was really interesting about the London Gladiator game was that the Gladiators are using a lot of really cheesy, unexpected strategies, and I think that since GC Busan was so used to playing in Apex in this sort of controlled environment where there is only one way you play, and that is how other Korean teams play, and that is sort of viewed as, I guess, the correct way, or the optimal way, quote unquote. And so, they have the pirate ship thing, they couldn't deal with it. There was other maps, I think on Nubani, they hid in that one little room, and Busan didn't know where they were, and then they just all come piling out. and then they die, and then they're expected to like bounce back and think of a strategy to get back after that. And I think that they were just really razzled at Gladiator's
I really like the
creative
term,
strategies.
pirate ship strat. I mean, that's the first time I heard the term pirate ship strat, and I actually really like
you
it.
never?
It's
you
really
never
stupid.
I mean, that's not, I mean, I've seen it, but I haven't heard like the name associated
Yeah,
with it, and I'm like,
'cause the
wow,
Race to
you know
Shield
what?
is
I
like
like
the
that. That's just
sales.
it's really exactly, and I just haven't heard the name, and I'm like, wow, that's actually I like the name. It's goofy. It's Overwatch. I like it. I will say though, Rascal's May during
His May was
Lunar
great.
Quality.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
It was so
good.
unexpected, and then he crushed with it.
He's oh god,
It was
it's
very
just
like
good.
season 1 in a weird way.
I love it.
Yeah,
I
did
love
too.
it.
And I think
I love when things like that happen. When it's like, yeah, I'm just gonna play this character that like no one else is playing right now. And you know what? I'm just gonna rock it. I'm just gonna go out. I'm gonna do my thing, and it's gonna be like one of the best plays of the preseason. I love stuff
Yeah.
like that. It's like probably my favorite part of the entire match. I mean, I wish I could be more positive about like them winning instead of losing, but you know what? That's like the big positive turnout for me is watching that play.
and I will say that really does sort of show, I think, the setup that is going to be, going forward, at least for a little bit here, because the GC Busan lads, they weren't able to really improvise, and like I hate to be harsh on them, but when they were up against that pirate ship strat and they just couldn't stop it, they really sort of dithered around in sort of the line of fire and just got shut down quite a bit. Like it was a very diamond level approach from guys
CJ's going hard.
who have taken on and beaten the best teams in the world. And I do wonder what that little communication hiccup was, because these guys have played together. They know how to gel. They know how to, work with each other. And even if these strats are unexpected, you've got to think that, they have some ability to improvise and deal with unexpected elements. Or at least you would hope
Yeah.
so.
Very true.
And I think the interesting thing is everyone was rating the GC Busan side of this roster much higher than the C9 KD
Well,
side.
yeah, because they destroyed
Because-
C9 KD.
Yes, exactly.
So that'd be the other way around, which, I mean, that was probably one of the bigger shocks to me of the entire preseason, that it just got so... You can definitely tell, like, I mean, I don't know if I can directly tell who's practiced more, or, like who's had more time. It just seems, like, really divided.
Yeah, speaking
I
of
guess this leads,
speaking of
I guess this leads
shocking,
over to our next one.
Yeah, and shocking, and
speaking of
also
shocking.
Shocking.
showing the C9
I
KD
guess,
side of the roster, because they pretty much
There's no one shocking in the world
yeah.
this time.
to steal Doa's joke for the London Shock match that followed up, like GC Busan, except for Havokpus, was sort of banished to the Phantom Zone, and it was C9 KD playing the entire match, and they looked awesome.
especially after Shock's match against Valiant, I was expecting Shock to put up a real fight because Shock looked fairly decent against Valiant. And
I know, right? There's like one of the bigger shocks of the entire preseason is how well Shock did. I mean, I expected them to. Well, first, I mean, I don't know. I didn't know if they'd be against Miami, not Miami, Florida.
Well,
I feel like that'd be kind of tied, but the fact they rolled over them, and I was like, okay, I could see that. But then with Valiant, it was so close. I was like, wow, okay. And they don't even have Sinatra or Super on the team. That, I mean, Baby Babe like really carried it through that first couple matches, but still super surprising. I was very much looking forward to this game because.
And like San Francisco Shock may have they may have ended the season the preseason, I should say, 1-2, but they were still competitive. They still showed up. They still showed out. But up against the C9 KD side of the roster, C9 KD was able to pull out a lot of compositions. They really showed the discipline we've come to expect from like watching Korean teams play, because like if you look at the World Cup, even in situations that looked super tense and had the crowd on their feet screaming, the Korean pros had were still stone cold. They knew exactly what they were doing. They played their game, And that's what I think we saw out of the C9KD roster. They just knew their strengths, they used their better flexibility, they did a better job managing their ults as well, I think, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Especially on Dorado, Rascal did a great job of sort of getting his Dragon Blades desynced with the support ultimates. So, you know, the moment those support ultimates were down, guess what was, you know, coming at them? That Dragon Blade was just there to just shred anything in the way of that payload.
I think Rascal and Birdring, I think definitely came out to show that they are probably one of the best DPS duos in Overwatch League, at least for right now. At least from a preseason perspective, because they were crushing it every chance they got. Also, I want to shine a spotlight on Nuss and Fury for a second, because to me they were the big puzzle pieces that I was kind of curious about, because these two were free agents. They weren't in either of the previous rosters in coming into this team, and they looked amazingly solid.
Yeah, they did. I was Nuss especially. Well, Fury did a great job sort of negating a lot of the projectile play, particularly Baby Bay's Pharah. Was just, you know, on it, ready to sort of help mitigate the worst of that damage and apply pressure to the pharmacy whenever it was, you know, flying up above, which that's the sign of a really impressive diva to me.
Yeah, no, I really did actually like watching that game. It was one of those games that I'm just happy they won. That sounds like really dumb, but I'm really glad they won. I was like, that was my kind of fear. I didn't think they were gonna lose a shock. I didn't think that it'd be like, I didn't think it was gonna be a roll or anything. I was a little nervous.
Oh, especially
mostly because the first game was so unexpectedly like a loss. I was like, man, can London pick this up? Can they like? Is this gonna be something that like everyone who's like, man, London's gonna be #1. They're gonna be able to do this and that, and they're like, well, I guess you know they're okay. So I mean, I'm just glad I'm relieved.
I think at least the good thing about us going 1-1 and a lot of other teams going 1-1 is that there's a very small skill disparity between all of the teams, at least for right now. Probably with the exception of probably the Seoul Dynasty. And
that's been a common thing that's been said amongst all the teams, that like even though like everyone's like, oh, Korean teams are the best, so on and so forth, the actual like difference between each team is very, you know, there's not that much.
Which I think is great for fans.
Certain players, yeah.
Because then any team has a conceivable chance of winning it all if they just play well enough in the season. So I think it gives a lot for everyone to get hyped about, because like, oh, you know, maybe the Florida Mayhem can actually pull it out if they maybe get a few more people to sub in and don't suck.
I mean, Florida Mayhem can't sub. They that's their biggest downfall for that team personally.
Yeah,
they can't sub. There's
though,
only 6 of them.
Bringing it back to Spitfire for a hot second, I do want to return the conversation to Birdring for a moment, because while his Widow looked absolutely terrifying, I feel like his Tracer didn't look as like top tier unstoppable as it has before. Like, his tracking and movement was still, you know, for the most part, really on point.
Oh yeah, the pulse bomb.
But yeah, he didn't really get much out of his ultimates, and even blew himself up once or twice.
I have also done that.
Well,
by the way,
but
I feel like everyone gonna have. That's
you
fair.
are not Birdring. You're not one of the people
I could be
one of the best tracers in the whole world.
See, I feel like this is the one thing that Overwatch League is really gonna show. Tracer is such a very popular character. She's used in every single comp, and every single team has to use her. There are so many fantastic Tracers in the league that you're going to be able to easily see who is the best. And I know Birdring is considered to be one of the best, and maybe this just was an off game for him for sure, but we're really going to be able to see like who stacks up on that, and that's just kind of what the league's going to show. And that's kind of something I feel like people who, or at least the people on the team who really are DPS mains, that's a lot of pressure, you know? There are just there's just a handful of just amazing tracers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's gonna be really. I'm really excited for, especially towards season 1, to see more 1v1 tracers, more 1v1s on certain heroes. Cause that's just interesting to see who's the best at this particular hero, besides who's the best team in general.
I want to see more Widow 1v1s because those are extremely
I love
exciting.
Widow 1v1s.
The Spitfire shock one was hilarious because I think
Baby
it was, who was on Widow? Was it Birdring or Rascal? I think it was Birdring because he shut out Baby Bay.
Yeah.
And it was amazing.
And Baby Bay looked so good as Widow, especially
I know.
versus Florida and Valiant. I mean, he looked fantastic as Widow, but of course,
he got stuffed completely.
I guess that shows that he's a good Widow in his own terms, but maybe not the best.
Mm-hmm. And we'll see. Although I will say, like, it does make me wonder if there isn't some sort of shift in how Tracer is played coming forward, because Effect, even though he looked really, really good in Dallas's games, like early on when they were having a bit of difficulty, he was still one of the people who was like firing on all cylinders. There were a bunch of times where he got picked relatively early in a fight, and it kind of hurt his team. And Effect himself said that he wasn't quite happy about how he was doing with Tracer. He thought Zarya was doing great, which I am not going to disagree with.
Oh yeah, no, that's Zarya.
So it just makes me wonder if maybe the Mercy meta being a thing and having Junkrat as sort of a viable option now, if there aren't things that are going to need those top-tier tracers to alter their playstyle in some way to maintain that dominance.
I mean, honestly, the fact that this preseason's been over, there's a lot of questions that's going to be coming up. That's one of them. How changes between now and January, because, Winter Wonderland's coming up tomorrow. That's coming up tomorrow, so that means a whole new update of maybe some tweaks to certain heroes besides the whole winter update. Is that going to play into any effect maybe further down the line? If there's any more PTR changes, certain strats that may have been used in the preseason, are they going to stay? Are they going to change? That was one of my biggest questions. Like, are the teams that are playing using their strats they want to use in the season, or they're just like using some they're kind of like, okay, let's just try this for fun and see what happens?
And I think there was some.
Because I don't really know how many of these teams are really going to want to show their full hand of tricks right off the gate. They're probably going to be more like, okay, let's show maybe one or two, and then let's try X, Y, and Z and see kind of what would work towards the season. Mm-hmm. Those are kind of my biggest thoughts of, like, especially moving into season 1, which is coming up really soon, actually.
January 6th.
I'm kind of sad I'm kind of sad the preseason's over. I want to watch more games, but I get it. I actually think, I thought it's January 10th was the first technically day.
I thought it was 6th.
Tickets are on sale for that, by the way. Actually, let me check the website. Okay, no. Alright, on the website it says the 10th. We don't play until January 11th. We play against, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So, which,
hopefully,
I don't know if you want to do predictions now, or if you want to do predictions maybe.
I think we should do predictions closer to when it is, because if we do it now, because we'll probably not have a lot to talk about between now and then the time.
Yeah, that's fair. I wouldn't say like in-depth like predictions, but I understand. But yeah, that's January 11th. We're gonna be playing first against Florida. The tickets are on sale now for that. I think they just got announced to be on sale today in the stadium. I can't go because I'm not in LA. If I could go to LA, I would be there like all the time. I'd probably be really broke. So, have you guys actually bought any of the merch yet?
Not yet.
I haven't. I want to get a hat, but I'll probably wait until
so
my birthday rolls around.
I'm broke as hell.
Funny enough, I made a tweet like, "Hey, so should I convince my parents to like lend me out some like money for some merch?" And then Spitfire actually responded, so that was actually kind of neat.
That is cool.
That was kind of neat, It's just like a little 5 seconds of, "Hey, they kind of know I a little bit exist. You know, now if we can get them to actually like listen to the podcast, that's like the next step on it.
We shall see. We just gotta keep doing our thing.
Get them to send us some of those like sick jerseys and hats.
Oh yeah,
and stuff,
give us free merch, please.
Listen, I will rip that hat every day of my life, no problem. And that shirt, it's so much. They have so many good things in that store. It's awful. They're actually not badly priced. That's something.
Oh yeah, the hats are pretty cheap. They're only like $35. And like the regular shirt's only like $25, I think.
Yeah, and the jerseys are $60. That's actually really not bad for a jersey, especially a sports jersey. I also found it really neat that they finally put up the World Cup jerseys.
Yeah.
That I noticed. But yeah, the jerseys only being $60. I was like, all right. I mean, that's still kind of pricey, and I wish that they had the player numbers and the names. That's something I'm like, I don't understand why they don't have that yet. They don't have that. That was something I was really surprised. I thought the first thing they do was put the numbers and everything, and then maybe have like an option to have a blank one versus having only blank ones and no player numbers. Because I know some of us would love to rep our favorite player.
My only complaint for the hat is that there was a picture that Fisher's in where he has a Spitfire hat on. It's blue, and then like under the bill it's green, and the logo looks kind of bigger and it looks a little bit better. And they're not selling those in the store, so he got that hat somewhere else.
Maybe that's like a test run.
I want that hat.
Gotta go.
I'm gonna go to LA.
Take it.
I'm gonna find out where he's staying. I'm gonna steal that hat.
Go into the practice room and take it. That's the only.
He'll be like, "What are you doing here?" And I'll be like, "What are you doing here?"
Maybe it's like a test run. Maybe they'll print out more. Some of the items sold out really quick. I know for a fact that fuel stuff sold out pretty quickly, especially the hat. The hat was like first thing to go, even with the ginormous Jack in the Box logo.
Yeah, that was the thing that bothered me with their merch, was that it had like that giant Jack in the Box thing on it, and I'm like, I don't know if I want that.
We're getting off topic.
The actual
here.
T-shirt. Yeah, I mean a little bit. I mean, we did talk about everything with the game and that they're playing the next game. And this is stuff just also pertaining to, last week, because all this stuff did happen last week.
True.
So I guess we can ask, besides me saying all this stuff about are they playing all their cards, do you have any more expectations about Season 1 at all?
I still think Spitfire, when they sort out the communication issues they were having, are going to be one of the top tier teams. They've got too much talent in too many places for them not to be, in my mind. I think, going by the preseason, if that's anything to go by, we're going to see the C9 KD sort of being the core of this roster, with members of GC Busan sort of swapped in and out as the composition or match sort of demands. And we'll see how that goes once GC Busan is sort of ironed out whatever issue they were having in that game against the Gladiators. What do you guys think about the other teams? Where do you guys rate them in comparison? Like, what's our sort of, like, rankings here?
I think top 4 pretty much remains the same as everyone else's. So, Seoul, us, crap.
You don't think we're number 1?
I mean, you can change it however you want. This is in no particular order.
No, I'm just joshing with it.
You're joshing.
I'm just like, supposed to be the Dogfight podcast. So,
not the Seoul Dynasty and Friends.
Not Seoul Dynasty.
Yeah, I think I was actually really impressed with the Gladiators. I'm curious to see if their very DPS focused strategies end up paying off, or it kind of bites them in the butt, because they put a lot on Surefour and their other DPS. So I'm really curious if like them doing a lot of triple DPS stuff ends up paying out for them more than it hurts them.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't hurt them to, like, if they picked up someone like Kaiser, who's now a free agent, or Fact Fiction after sort of like Season 1's or Section 1 or whatever the first,
I know they can do like
phase.
in the mid-season they can like do signings again.
Yeah, but when they can do the mid-season signings, I think picking up another tank and maybe another support, because like Rolf and Adam are open and they're awesome. Like,
I'm surprised that Adam hasn't gotten picked up by anyone. He's so good. He was so good at the World Cup. He was amazing on C9. I don't know why you don't sign this guy.
There are a lot of players. I mean, look at poor AK.
Look at everyone on Runaway.
He's so sad. Oh, Runaway is a whole other story. Yeah, no, I feel for them
because they're kind of coming apart right now.
I'm also who was that? Isn't Runner going into
compulsory military service?
The military. Yeah, and then Kaiser is also leaving. I feel badly.
I do too, but getting.
I mean, you guys already said like your picks. I guess now that preseason's kind of over, not kind of over. It is over. I will say London's number 1. I see a lot of potential in them. Seoul would be number 2. I feel like they could switch pretty easily. 3, I'm gonna stick with Dallas on this one.
Yeah.
I kind of really want Dallas to sneak up. I mean, they're one of the only teams that pulled off, winning both their games in the preseason. Granted, they played against, Florida, and they played against Houston, and the Houston game was fantastic. But I'll say they're number 3.
What about the undefeated Philadelphia Fusion?
Yeah, I mean,
Philadelphia Fusion is either going to be...
I mean, you can't lose if you don't play.
Roll safe.
So,
Philadelphia Fusion...
They're hiding their strats, and also they're hiding it behind extremely bad marketing and memes.
Oh my god, it's so bad.
Who hired this person to run their Twitter? It's just awful.
They have a meme person, like a meme specialist. I could go in all day about why everything about it is awful.
They're not a meme specialist. I could be a better meme specialist than them.
Like, oh god, it just throws me off, and other teams are taking such advantage of just ripping them a new one. It's just... Anyways, back to the topic. I know I'm going to get way too off topic for marketing garbage. So yeah, I still say London, Seoul, Dallas, then I'd probably say New York, and then if I'm going to do my top 5, and then Boston would probably be afterwards. Out of all this. I feel like that's fair. They could all switch at any point. I mean, I don't think Boston will switch. I think Boston will consistently stay 4 or 5. I think the top 4, though, in general, they could switch at any point. I don't know if Dallas will ever reach that number 1 spot, as much as that'd be kind of cool to see them kind of overcome their Korean teams. But I mean, I still want London to win. Like, listen, I'm on the Dogfight podcast. I gotta be loyal here. I can't root for Seoul. I can't make Seoul be number 1.
You can't sell your soul for Seoul.
No, I can't sell my soul for Seoul on the Dogfight podcast. Gotta be that loyal fan who's from America for a UK team played by Koreans.
Oh, and we've come full circle, haven't we?
Listen, that's our job. We gotta make it all tie together. Like, we gotta get that done.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just beautiful. It brings tears in my eyes.
Jesus Christ.
Alrighty, is that all the predictions for season 1? I
think
now
so.
We full circle with all of our puns and jokes about Seoul and everything.
Does anyone have any final thoughts before we come in for a landing, so to speak?
I don't know.
We gotta stick the landing. I think we've covered the bases.
All right.
For now, until January.
Well then, please put your tray table up and return your seats to their full upright position as we are coming in for a landing. Thank you for listening to our podcast, and we hope to see you in the skies real soon.
Stay classy, Internet.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye.